That was good though. I like that.
I knew that there was going to be something that went wrong there. There always is something that goes wrong. Yes, welcome back. Obviously, we're getting ready for our interview here with Patrick Dawson, but I am not alone. I am joined by Missildine from It's Always Sunny in Stormwind. Thank you for joining me here today, Mr.
Hey,
Missildine.
thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a massively exciting opportunity. Patrick Dawson should be joining us very shortly. We have a few questions to ask him. We've got quite a few questions, so as soon as he's here, we will be ready to go. It's going to be it's going to be riding by the seat of our pants for this one.
Listen, we got about 30 minutes, so we're going to be rapid firing questions. We're not going to, yes or no questions. I'm just kidding. We're not doing that. But yeah, we don't have a lot of time, so we're going to be trying to get as many as we have. I know I've seen a bunch of questions in chat, and if we don't get to yours, it's not because we don't like you.
Yes, it's because we do only have 30 minutes.
Yep, exactly.
And there's only so much we can do with that allotted time frame, especially with some of the questions that that we do have there. There's some very big questions. And speaking of ready to answer some big questions, I believe Patrick is here with us right now.
I'm here. Sound check. Does this work?
Sounds it's working.
Great.
It's all working. Thank you for joining us here on Warcraft Radio for today's interview, little questionnaire about Shadowlands. Hopefully the day's gone quite well. Hopefully the excitement levels over there are peaking with everyone taking a look at this early access to the beta, I suppose it is realistically.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me. I'm super excited. I know Warcraft Radio goes way back to the early days of Warcraft too, so it's a privilege to be talking to you all today. We are super excited about this early look at the beta. It is our last alpha build that you all are playing right now, so beta is coming next week. But we're super excited to see all the new features that are coming out and getting into players' hands for the first time, especially stuff like the outdoor mall, like this dangerous, tormented landscape of kind of getting back to a more visceral, difficult world of Warcraft in an outdoor space. So, yeah,
love it. My first question is, why do you sound so much better than us? Your mic is fantastic.
Well, that's good. We actually had to do a lot of work to get everyone set up for working from home.
Yeah, you sound great.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, so the big thing that I've noticed in this build is you say it's the last alpha build. It feels so beta, it really does.
Yeah, it's a lot of great things have come online with this build that it is starting to feel that way, which is a great marker for what's coming next week.
Yeah,
I think for us, we just want to make sure we're holding true to our ideals and principles, that beta really is feature complete, and there still are a few features that need to come online to make that feel real. So that's why beta is next week, even though the early look you all are getting now is it feels pretty good. But really the idea here is to position the builds in such a way that we're ready to get that feedback from the community over the next few months to really be able to fine tune and craft the game into the best possible experience we can get for people, so that launch day feels great and the expansion just feels amazing.
Yeah,
it's
great.
And I think probably one of the most exciting things is obviously some of the new features that you folks have coming, and the big one is Torghast. Everyone's talking about Torghast, and there's been a lot of obviously questions in regards to how you get to Torghast, keys that and that was all addressed yesterday. I think that one of the biggest ones that I've seen in regards to questions being asked is realistically the difficulty of Torghast. Now, when we've seen people in the alpha, they have been slamming through some of the higher levels really quickly. Are there any plans to potentially make that slightly more difficult in the lead up, or do you feel as though that is going to be something that is potentially changed as the time goes on?
Yeah, right now the feedback we've been hearing from the community, and it's consistent with our own interpretation of it, is that Torghast actually gets a little easier as you progress through it. That's not what we want. We want it to feel like it's getting a little bit more challenging and harder. Obviously, if you get like a really broken combo of powers as you go through the tower, it should feel a little bit more easy to do, but ultimately, yes, it should feel harder. So with Torghast, one of the things we really wanted to make sure we did was get that out to our alpha players as early as possible so we could get feedback just like that. And we've been able to respond and pivot based on that feedback, right? Like Torments was a way to add some time pressure that we then backed away from because of the community reaction to it. The recent announcement Ian made about not keying it and just letting you go in whenever you want is also in response to community feedback. And now the current feedback we're hearing is exactly what you just expressed, right? Where it just feels like it's a little too easy. So I actually just started a pitch last Wednesday on how we're going to increase the difficulty level and do this sort of step system. I'm sure we'll have some more info on that in the next build. So you'll actually see some difficulty changes coming to Torghast shortly.
Okay,
cool.
Fun. Yeah, I think it was one of the systems that people have been so excited about. I think all the information that people can get at this point is they're grabbing hold of it as tightly as they possibly can, hoping that it does turn out to be as exciting as it appeared to be. Obviously, way back when it was announced and when it was finally revealed in the alpha, and we had access to it.
So.
Yeah, no.
Speaking of some of the features that we have coming, one of the big things that I've been seeing is how exactly will we be able to acquire the Covenant sets? I've seen tons of people loving that transmog and all of those, the beauty of the art of that gear. And I've seen people just wondering where we're getting it.
Yeah, well, we're actually still working on a lot of the reward systems on exactly how you're going to acquire these things. Reward systems in World of Warcraft, as I'm sure you're aware, are very complex. We want to... the philosophies and pillars we have for how you acquire things, however, for Shadowlands is really meant to be player agency based. We want you to be able to do the activities that you want to do and you choose to do, or at least know exactly where to go to get something, to be able to target those specific things. So I think we're still sussing out exactly where it's going to land with the cosmetics for the Covenant Sanctums. I do know, since it is Covenant related, obviously you're going to have to do something that is Covenant related in order to gain that ability to get those transmog sets. But we'll get there.
Cool.
Yeah, I think everyone's very, very excited to get their hands on these these sets that we're going to get from the Covenants. One thing I suppose that we've seen in Twitch chat over the past couple of minutes is in regards to whether or not this is going to continue on further into the Shadowlands. Are we going to potentially see some cosmetics that may affect, say, Druid forms, even potentially something as very, very very familiar as Paladin wings? Are we going to see those potentially change with any Covenant choices to help along with this identity with your Covenant later on in Shadowlands?
Yeah, I think one of the things I love, and I'm going to talk about Druid forms a little bit here, because we really have seen such positive feedback about the character customization options we've given everyone. One of the things I've heard over the last few days, and the feedback's being taken very seriously, is that, boy, wouldn't it be nice if Druids had something similar for their forms, their shapeshifts? What about if they had the opportunity to customize that a little bit more? I think that's a great idea. That's something we want to explore more. Whether we can tie that into covenants or just other systems, I think that would be something to do. Cosmetics are important to people, and I think we're always looking for ways to find gameplay hooks to include different cosmetic things in there, whether that be a suggestion like Paladin Wings. I could see that being related to something in Shadowlands, of course, right? Like Bastion definitely has angelic looking creatures in there. So I think there's a long way to go on the evolution of these systems, especially as we get into content updates that go forward. So we're going to look for what the community is looking for and what they want, and see how we can achieve that.
Speaking of what the community wants and what people yell about, do you have any news on if we'll be getting anything like the Warbringer cinematics in the lead up to Shadowlands?
I don't think we have anything to announce today, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think there's a lot of ways we tell story in World of Warcraft, and one of those is those cinematics. Those, I think, were wildly popular in Warlords. We even had some Harbingers ones for Battle for Azeroth as well, that went pretty well. So, our cinematics team is always on top of these things and is looking at ways to tell story. And we have a lot of story to tell in Shadowlands, so I wouldn't be surprised to see some cool stuff coming up.
Right, and with the Shadows Rising novel coming out, 5 days? Very cool.
Yeah, I'm actually excited to see that. I haven't read that yet, so
Nice.
yeah, got to get that in my hands.
I've got mine pre-ordered. It's ready. I cannot wait to get my hands on it.
Enjoy it.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. Speaking of ways, obviously telling stories. Some of the bigger stories tie directly into the Horde and the Alliance. There's been a lot of talk recently in regards to balance between the Alliance and the Horde. We are seeing, I think. Obviously, we don't have access to the numbers, but from what people have been saying on various different forums and stuff, there does seem to be a slight imbalance between the Horde and the Alliance in regards to more people seem to be going Horde. Obviously, making the right choice in going Horde, but I think the biggest question is, are there any plans to potentially balance that Horde and Alliance discrepancy, and if so, how would you folks go around? How would you folks go about actually achieving that?
It is something that is a topic that we discuss regularly. We've experimented with a few different things. Some haven't gone as well as maybe we would have liked, and others have helped work the balance a little bit better. It is a tough problem. I think what you see, and what I see at least, is a lot of the top end mythic raiding guilds happen to be Horde. So if you want to participate in that level of gameplay, a lot of folks feel that, hey, in order to do that, I should be Horde. That's a real tough problem to combat. We want to make sure we're careful. We don't want to do something where we give Alliance some crazy power and then everybody starts to swing Alliance, and now we've just created the opposite issue. So it's something that we carefully consider and try to figure out over time. I do think one thing that's going to help this a little bit too is at last BlizzCon, a topic came up about realm health, and maybe there are some unhealthy realms out there. And we actually went through a study to look at our realm health, to look at what realms maybe we want to connect. And actually this week we began a process to start realm connections and preparations for Shadowlands to make sure that on launch day, when everybody logs in, they all have a healthy realm to play on, whether you are Alliance or Horde. So that's undergoing right now. So hopefully that'll help a little bit, but more to come. We always keep looking at this stuff as best we can.
I know an easy solution would be Night Elf Paladins. Whenever you guys want to do that, yeah, that'll fix it, no problem. There we go, crisis averted.
All right, well, it's that simple. Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of a lore question, but so as we know from some of the very early Alpha Bastion, the Void Lords are probably pretty angry at us for killing N'Zoth. And we know that they've attacked the Shadowlands before, but were unsuccessful. Is there any chance that we'll be seeing the Void Lords in Shadowlands?
Well, that is a great question, and that's actually very insightful to notice that with all the old gods finally perishing. That's going to gain some attention from the Void Lords for sure. I think what you're going to see is something I don't want to spoil. So I can't speak to the details of that, but I think your instincts are right on the Void Lord connection there. Obviously, like any action we take is going to have ramifications in the cosmos in some way, shape, or form. We just did a very heroic thing that is very affecting that group of people in the cosmos. So I don't think they're just going to let that slide. So we'll have to see what happens next.
Cool. I'm excited for that.
That's going to be really, really interesting to see. So one question that I had from someone who's quite well known in the community, Marlamin, obviously one of the great data miners out there. He obviously, when the alpha was first released, there was a very brief period where Exile's Reach was kind of there was a situation in there where you actually didn't choose your class until you were halfway through or a part of the way through Exile's Reach. Is that something that was kind of considered at the start, and could we potentially see a return of that in the future, depending on various different things that happen with classes, or do you always kind of want to have the class choice be directly at the start of the character select?
Class is a major part of your identity. It's pretty core in there. Now, obviously, with a new player, understanding what a mage is or a rogue is may not be as intuitive. So I know we want to make it an experience that you can replay through a few times if you want to try a different class. I remember playing the early builds of Exile's Reach even back in November and December, and to my recollection, we always had class choice in there from the start. So I don't know if we ever have had any build that was published with class choice coming in later. But that is such a key part of your identity. It does seem like a decision that is important to make at moment one. And if you go through the experience and you don't like it, go back through it. It's really not very long, and that way you can learn a different class and try out new things.
Yeah, I think that whole scenario takes for existing players takes about 40 minutes tops, so not bad at all.
Yeah, that was my experience too. And I think really what the purpose of Exiles Reach was, it's such a great thing. I'm so glad we did this, and we've gotten great feedback from the community on it too. But as a World of Warcraft team, we have people on this team that play at the high level, play at the medium level, play at the low level. Maybe some just come back for things. So we have good representation on the team to help us understand how to craft this game for veteran players. There's very few people on this team who have never played WoW before. So it's actually a little bit of a challenge for us to make some content that helps show people what's so great about World of Warcraft. But Exiles Reach was a challenge because of that. But we were able to get in with our user research team and actually find people who haven't played WoW before and work for the past 2 years almost on trying to find, hey, what's important to them? What speaks to them? How do we actually get people into this game and show them what's great about WoW? And a lot of things came out of that, even things like the level squish, which is like, okay, so you finish this cool experience. A lot of people were like 120 levels. That's pretty daunting to do. And even for veteran players saying like, well, level 120 to level 130, that's not as meaningful to me anymore. So revisiting some of the general philosophies about how levels work in our game, it was a big change that came out of that, as well as just general feedback from the team. So that's been good.
Cool. So next question. This one is pretty simple. It's just kind of a verification thing. Is the Brutosaur Longboy going away on the pre-patch or release date?
That's a great question. I don't want to tell you something inaccurate.
Okay.
So let me get back to you on that. It is definitely going away for Shadowlands, but I don't. Again, I don't know if that's exactly 901 pre-patch versus the actual launch date. Yeah, we'll have to see.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get back to you.
It's one of those where I think a lot of people are desperately looking at their balance, sort of seeing how much gold they've got going. Yeah, but when?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think
if I can jump in real quick,
matter for those. Yeah. What do you got?
If I can jump in real quick, I can say from the community team's perspective, we are actually working on an article that will go out that details all of that.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Josh.
There we go. Thank you, Josh, for that little bit of a confirmation on that one. I think one of the things that we're seeing in regards, that is massively getting the community talking about is the customization with certain certain characters. Are we going to see potentially an extension of that to, say, a removal of the troll undead slouching? Maybe we can kind of take what we did with the orcs and do that with the trolls and the undead. Are we going to be seeing some more additions like that, or is that going to be something that might potentially roll in one of the the like 1.2s, 1.2, the 0.2s or something like that?
Sure. I mean, I think we were just starting with the customization stuff, right? Like we made tremendous strides in this expansion to give people the ability to diversify their character or sort of demonstrate their own persona in game, as well as people who play the fantasy characters, stuff that's maybe a little bit more like dwarves or trolls, to give them like special tattoos or different customizations there. This is step one of that. As we see what people like and what people engage with, there will be more customization options for sure. I think you've even seen it with the Forsaken. There are some that look a lot less undead, like more freshly undead, more Kalium Nethel style. So we are experimenting with different takes on what those races can look like, and I think there will be more to come on that for sure.
Cool. Next question is actually about, so we know that there is a PvP vendor going to be in Shadowlands. But one of the big things that I know I've seen a lot of in BFA is people complaining that a lot of their BIS comes from PvE, a lot of the corruption effects, a lot of all of these enchantments. Obviously, we're losing the corruption and all that. But is it definitely like a goal of yours that the BIS gear in PvP will come from a PvP vendor or PvP rewards?
What we want in Shadowlands is to make sure that the players have the agency and choice to be able to select the best gear for them for the activities that they want to participate in. now I'll tell you, even right now in Battle for Azeroth as a mage, my best in slot trinket actually comes from running a whole lot of PvP, which I just got last week. So yay! But yeah, no, it's fun. But yeah, I like to play everything in the game: PvP, PvE, collection stuff, everything. So like to see where my gear comes from is pretty everywhere. Like I think for me, Mythic Plus is a big part of it, rating's a big part of it, and actually that trinket from PvP is really good too. The purpose of bringing that PvP vendor back is really the community feedback on it. There was a whole lot of feedback. We heard it very loudly that people wanted that choice of what kind of gear they wanted to get for PvP. So bringing that back in was certainly a huge thing for us, and a kind of a thank you to the community for letting us know that that's how they want to interact with the game.
No, it's nice to hear that there's obviously, you know, and we're at a point now where it's going to be, you know, pretty difficult realistically to balance all the classes perfectly with everything, with PvE, with PvP. You know, it's going to be very difficult, but you know, it's nice to hear that there is something in place that, you know, that you folks kind of see as being something you want to, at the very least, you know, at the very least address and say this is, you know, lay it out there realistically.
Yeah, I think with especially when it comes to PvP, you're absolutely right. It's very difficult to balance that. PvE balance is difficult too. It's not like it's easier, but with so many abilities, with so many systems, with so many things like Covenant abilities and just all the gear you can get, PvP absolutely is a challenge to balance. But it's something that is important to us, and we want to make sure we get it right. So one of the good things about what we're doing here with the beta is trying to make sure that those reward systems actually come online pretty soon. That way we can have enough time to respond to the feedback about what feels good, what doesn't feel quite as good, what feels a little bit overpowered or maybe underpowered, so we can address some of those issues. But options and choice are the big theme. And part of that actually, when it comes to PvP, goes back to the class balance and the unpruning work that we've done to allow people to have more abilities and kind of get back to the class fantasy rather than the spec fantasy. So I'm excited to see how that plays out in PvP as well.
I think mentioning the sort of like obviously the impruning and the talent changes that were made. I think obviously there's, you know, we've had a little bit of time in alpha. There's only X amount of people that have been able to test stuff, and obviously some people are talking about Shadow Priests, some of the Hunter talents. Are we now in a position where we're pretty much done seeing any talent changes and it will be balance work, or with obviously more people getting into the beta to test stuff, will we potentially be seeing more talent changes and class changes down the line rather than just straight up balancing?
I think Ian said it best yesterday in the live stream where he was talking about like the broad strokes happening now, and then the balance is the refining that's going to happen a little bit later. I think part of this, however, is all of those reward systems coming online, because talents or abilities or certain classes may feel underpowered until you get things like soul binds into the game and the covenant abilities into the game, and how do those interact with the classes and can buff certain pieces of that. And then we'll take a look after those things are in and say, hey, like what's still lacking here? What doesn't feel good to play? And listen to that feedback from the community, and we can still make some broad changes at that point. But once we have those systems in and we feel like we're in a pretty good place, I think you'll see more fine-tuning after that.
Great. So sort of a technical question, but will there be any improvements to delay or lag that we're seeing during some larger scale world PvP events or even PvE events?
So yeah, this is something we always look at, but for each expansion, we establish a bit of a task force. We actually have a engineering group that focuses specifically on this, that are kind of starting up the process right now of measuring what is expensive and what isn't expensive, what costs us a lot in terms of our bandwidth and CPU usage on the servers. So a lot of times they find some really low-hanging fruit, which is really easy to fix. So hopefully we'll get things to a great place in terms of ship and have things ready to go to make it pretty awesome for everybody and have a smooth playing experience.
Sweet.
That's awesome. I think we've seen a lot of obviously old abilities returning. We've seen stuff like the elemental sharpening stones, old blacksmith sort of recipes, the crunch to level 60. Is there any, I don't want to say connection, but is there any sort of like correlation in between the success of Classic and going back to the roots of Warcraft that we've seen with Shadowlands? Is there any correlation between those two, or was the idea to do, go back to level 60 with Shadowlands in place even before Classic WoW came out?
So, I mean, there's no denying that Classic has helped us understand a little bit more about what players want. We definitely see Classic and Modern WoW as two very different offerings to players. They're not, I mean, they're similar games, but they're not anything like each other right now. So it's more like which do you want to play, or maybe you do want to play both, and that's great. But ultimately, yeah, Classic had very different talent systems out there, very different gear acquisition systems, and I think what we saw for Shadowlands was, yeah, some of that did influence decisions, but overall, I think what we wanted to do and what our goals were was to really go back to the class fantasy and have things be more about your class and class power, while continuing to have systems that enhance that and go through your entire gameplay loop. Things like the Covenant system, that really encompasses all different walks of life, whether it be raids or PvP or outdoor world activities or whatever you choose to do. Those were sort of the important pillars of kind of revisiting what that class fantasy was.
So speaking of, how different Classic and Live are, I'm really enjoying the new adventure table and the auto chess battler. I think that's great. I can't wait to see it on Companion app. One of the things that I've always wondered is there any discussions being had about possibly bringing pet battles to the Companion app?
We've actually talked about it a few times. There's some challenges with that, but that's something that's always on the table. We tend to revisit that every year or so to talk about what it would look like and how it would feel. We've had a few internal pitches for it, so I don't think we have any plans right now, but you never know what's going to happen. It is something that we continue to discuss.
Never say never. Okay,
Exactly.
I'm an active pet battler myself, so I get it. Like, I think I have over 1,200 unique pets at 25, so like I would love that for sure.
It's so
we'll
relaxing.
see what we can do.
Yeah,
It's
great.
It's fantastic. I think
It's a good way to engage with WoW, and actually that's one of the things I love about the adventure system too, is that having that be both on the companion app and in game, and the fact that we're making it more tactical and thoughtful, it is a great way to continue to engage with the game even if you're away from your PC.
Yeah. That's very true. I mean, we've got time for a couple more questions. So I think one of the ones that I've had on my mind, obviously recently there was the statement put out in regards to one of the characters in Bastion, Pelagos, and the pronouns they were using in regards to how they were addressed. We've seen obviously people addressed like that via their character they choose at the start, male or female. However, are we going to potentially see something in the future where people will be able to select which pronouns they wish to use in regards to sort of like when they're addressed in mission texts or via various NPCs? Is that something we could potentially see coming in the future?
I think one of the goals, especially with character customization, was really allow people to have a representation of themselves in game. And as I mentioned earlier, that's sort of the first step in terms of doing that. I think there's a lot more work to do. I think pronouns are definitely something that we need to discuss about. Is this something that makes sense, and can we include to help people feel like they have a better representation of themselves and their character in game? It's certainly a topic coming up. It won't be in for Shadowlands, but it's something that we'll continue to discuss. Hopefully we'll have good news soon.
Cool. So this kind of goes, you might not have an answer for it because I know you guys still are working on the reward structure, but with the way legendaries are going to be in Shadowlands, are these something that are going to have to be upgraded with every patch, every main content patch? Are we going to have to upgrade those, or are they going to be set at a high enough thing where you guys tune them in the background and you don't really do anything with that?
I think you were spot on the it's going to be tough to answer that question at this point in development. So I do know with the legendary system, a lot of what we liked in Legion was the fact that it meaningfully changed the way you play your character. A lot of what we didn't like was the way you acquired them, where it felt like it was just sort of random. You didn't really have a lot of choice and agency in it. So we've sort of revisited that philosophy to figure out, well, how can we get it so that you can more target what legendaries you're looking for in terms of how you want to change your playstyle or change your gameplay. So I think we'd be looking at that. Those abilities, like if you remember the Legion ones, for sure, they were pretty evergreen, if I remember right. Like I just remember one of the first ones I got as a mage was that Dragon's Breath hat with the 40-yard range. Oh my god, that thing was so fun. I don't even think it was the best one, but like I used that the whole time in Legion. I didn't feel like I needed to change that out or do stuff. And I think we even added new legendaries throughout the content updates there too. But you know, with any system, I think we want to release it. Well, first off, give feedback in the beta, then release it and see how people are actually engaging with it. And if we feel like it needs to some updates or some adjustments, then we'll revisit what that looks like in content updates.
Exactly. We're coming right up to the end now. One final question. I know, obviously, you probably can't answer this in too much detail, but realistically, when can we sort of expect to hear news about the pre-event, and how long are you folks looking at making that last before the initial release of Shadowlands?
With all pre-expansion events that we do, they're usually pretty consistent, right? It's usually a few weeks before the actual launch of the expansion, but a few weeks after the pre-patch itself. Usually they're put up on the PTR for testing at some point. So I think when we actually see a 901 PTR, you'll get a lot more info about what that event is and what the duration is going to be.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Obviously, a lot of information going out there, but I think you know, both myself and Missildine can say we are very, very excited for Shadowlands, and we are really, really looking forward to the fantastic work that you folks are all doing over at Blizzard to obviously bring this to us this year with everything that's going on. So I think from everyone, from us at Warcraft Radio, from everyone in the community, you know, a massive thank you to you and your team for doing what you have been doing over the past couple of months.
Well, we love doing it, and thank you all for continuing to play and give us feedback on the alpha. It has been a wild year for sure, but we're going to be excited to play with y'all in Shadowlands, and can't wait till we get that out to you.
Great.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Take care.
There we go. Well, that was Patrick Dawson. Obviously, you know, a lot of answers there. Apologies if we couldn't get to your questions. Obviously, only have, you know, a limited time, as everyone does, but there are more opportunities down the road. Obviously, they're doing interviews over the next couple of days. There's always forum posts, but as soon as any information comes out, as soon as any new beta builds come out, you know that us here on Warcraft Radio, we're going to be covering it. We're going to be covering it on our, you know, here on this channel, as well as our personal channels that you can find if you just click down below on Team Warcraft Radio. I believe, Missildine, you're one of those, aren't you?
Yeah, I am.
There we go. So, yes, once again, thank you to everyone for joining us here. Obviously, we're going to take a short break while we get everything sorted, and when we come back, we're going to be diving straight back into some more, well, early access beta gameplay. We'll see you folks shortly.
Great. Thanks, everyone.